Morning, good afternoon, good evening. I played this video clip the other day in which Chamisa was claiming that Triple C was going to win the 2023 elections and was going to win big. Hashtag God is in it. And he was preparing for his cabinet. Here it is again.
Makorokoto Zimbabwe nokuti hakuna munhu anomira kana denga raronga plan. Denga raronga plan, denga harifoiri. Plan yamwari haifoiri. Ini ndatanga kugadzira cabinet. There is no way we are not going to form a new cabinet. There is no way we are not going to have a celebration. There is no way we are not going to have an inauguration. Let's start preparing for our inauguration. Let's start preparing for our celebration.
That video clip is important because Zimbabwe is a failed state, and the root cause for it is that for the last 45 years, we have failed to hold free, fair, and credible elections. Zanu PF has rigged the elections. In the last 25 years, of those 45 years, MDC Triple C leaders have connived. The connection is important. What Chamisa was saying was telling the people that they should participate in the 2023 elections because Triple C was going to win big. The people believed it. They participated. What people must realize is we already knew that the election process is flawed. We've known that since 2008. That was the watershed elections. And what happened in that year is SADC and the AU forced Zanu PF to go into a GNU. And the primary purpose of the GNU was to force to implement the democratic reforms to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections. That did not happen. MDC guys failed to implement even one token reform. And instead of admitting that they sold out during the GNU, they've since come back and have been telling people that they can win rigged elections. That is where the connivance comes in. The primary reason why people of Zimbabwe wanted the opposition in the late 1990s is that it took them 20 years to realize that Zanu PF, once considered the nation's liberators, were never going to allow the people of Zimbabwe to have a meaningful say in the governance of the country. As long as Zanu PF was able to continue rigging the elections, the country was doomed. And so the consensus was we need to elect opposition leaders whose number one task would be to implement democratic changes to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections. The MDC, the party itself, named itself the Movement for Democratic Change, promising that they will be delivering the democratic change. If the people themselves were following it, this would not be rocket science. It's now 25 years down the line. And yet Zanu PF is still able to blatantly rig the elections. The people themselves will be the ones saying, well, what is happening here? If we elected MDC to implement reforms to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections, if Zanu PF is still able to rig the elections blatantly, then there's definitely something wrong. I should not be the one saying it. They should be saying it themselves. But after 25 years, the penny has not dropped. And the tragedy with some of our people is that when somebody else raises the point, instead of them saying, yeah, right, what is happening here? Their commitment, their allegiance to MDC is now so strong that they consider anyone who holds Chamisa to account an enemy. They've elevated Chamisa to a pedestal where Chamisa is now a demigod. As much as we are fighting to end the case of rigged elections and bad governance, most of these people, and there are many of them, nearly 2 million voted in the 2023 elections because they believed Chamisa's idiotic lie that he had plugged the vote rigging loopholes. And there were millions other Zimbabweans out there, mostly in the diaspora, who still believed in Chamisa. They didn't have the chance to vote, but they would have voted if they had the chance. And all those people, while some of them have grudgingly accepted that Chamisa did indeed lie about plugging the vote rigging loopholes, they've stubbornly refused to take the next step and ask themselves, if he lied, why did he lie? Because it is important. You ask that question, then you'll come to the conclusion that he lied, knowing fully well that Zanu PF was rigging the elections, and knowing fully well that by participating, the people will be giving Zanu PF legitimacy. Coming back to what we're talking about, Zimbabwe is a failed state because we failed to hold free, fair, and credible elections. How are we going to solve the problem of being a failed state without putting an end to this madness of rigged elections and bad governance? Surely, Chamisa should be held to account for that. But when you've got people who have the mentality that asking those awkward questions is blaming Chamisa, that's when you realize if we've got a serious problem. Chamisa and company have been conniving. They've been playing the dirty game of doing nothing to implement the democratic reforms to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections, and then calling people to participate in flawed elections to give Zanu PF legitimacy, all out of greed. And how anyone can fail to see the seriousness of that problem beggars belief. But that's where we are. As much as we would want to see an end to the failed state, if we cannot stop Zanu PF going ahead with the 2028 elections with not even a single token reform implemented, and it is clear that is going to happen, and we cannot stop Chamisa and company participating in these flawed elections out of greed, what we can do is stop the millions of the so-called Chamisa Chete Brigade participating in these flawed elections to give the process legitimacy. And that is proving to be a bridge too far. Because many of these 2 million who were conned to participate in 2023, in 2018, 2013, really do not have an idea what is going on here. They never understood, for instance, in the late 1990s, that we wanted an opposition to implement reforms, that the primary purpose of the opposition is to implement democratic changes. They never understood what those democratic changes were, much less who was to implement them and how they were to be implemented. What were the consequences of failing to implement them, etc., etc. They never understood any of that. They just took it on word of mouth that MDC guys would implement the reforms as they promised. When they failed to do so during the GNU, they did not understand any of that either. It was just water off a duck's back. And so they had no problem believing Chamisa when he told them that Triple C could win rigged elections. And when he failed, they never asked any question. Here is the one occasion when Chamisa was taken to task by the BBC reporter on the issue of lying.
Ende patakasangana na Trump akatibvunza naye vakomana mari yamuri kuda kuti nyika ifambe imari.
Serious questions were raised about your behaviour in Washington, D.C. You did see some senior people on Capitol Hill, some Congress people, but you also claimed that you'd seen Donald Trump. You claimed you had a conversation with him in which you said he asked you how much you needed to move the country forward. You told him $15 billion, and he said to you that he would provide the money if you won the election. That was not true, was it?
Sangana na Trump akatibvunza naye vakomana mari yamuri kuda kuti nyika ifambe imari.
It was not true that you'd seen Donald Trump and that Donald Trump indicated to you that he would provide, if you won the election, $15 billion.
All those statements were said by other people, not what I said.
Akasangana na Trump akatibvunza naye vakomana mari yamuri kuda kuti nyika ifambe imari.
Well, no, because there is a video which shows you at a rally in January back home in Zimbabwe saying that Donald Trump had pretty much promised you $15 billion. To be clear, because some people in Zimbabwe are still confused, you're now telling me you did not meet Donald Trump.
We did not.
Well, that is the truth. You did not. Just as much as he lied that he had plugged all the vote rigging loopholes, you did not. And the consequence of the people participating in those flawed elections was to perpetuate the dictatorship. Chamisa is gearing to lie to the people and con them to participate in 2028 elections with no reforms implemented, making them believe that this time he is going to win. That will be another lie. And having conned the people to participate, the consequences of that will be to give the vote rigging Zanu PF legitimacy, and thus perpetuating the dictatorship. This point has got to be made. As much as there are some people out there whose allegiance to Chamisa borders on personality cult mentality, where Chamisa is now a demigod who cannot be questioned, much less held to account. In the interest of ending this madness of failed state, the case of rigged elections, particularly after 45 years now and counting, of Zanu PF rigging the elections, and bad governance, we need to address this issue. MDC, CCC leaders have been conniving in helping Zanu PF stay in power the last 25 years. And we, the ordinary people, by participating, we have helped to give Zanu PF legitimacy. This should not be a mystery. This is not rocket science. It's common sense. And we need to move on as a people. It is mind-boggling that in this 21st century, there will be millions of people out there who consider a mere mortal like Chamisa to be a demigod. They would not believe Chamisa can be a liar. Even with all the evidence of him lying, they refuse to accept it. Well, this is a dangerous situation for Zimbabwe. The bigger picture is Zimbabwe is a failed state, and the root cause is decades of Zanu PF rigging the elections. We cannot stop Chamisa and company conniving and participating in these flawed elections. What we can do is we, the voters, stop being so gullible and naive that we believe some of his idiotic lies to con us to participate in flawed elections. Think about it. Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon.